Welcome to this week's Explainer, everyone. You know, if you've been following the news lately, there is just a massive amount of noise out there, right? Well, today, we're cutting straight through it. We're mapping out the absolute most consequential, verified court proceedings for the week of August 17th through the 23rd, 2026. We're keeping our focus strictly on the facts, the exact legal boundaries of each case, and structured analysis. So let's break down exactly what's scheduled, what legal stage we've actually reached, and honestly, why it matters.
Okay, let's dive right into our agenda. We'll be looking at the Duane Davis trial, the Lindsay Clancy trial, and the Karmelo Anthony hearings, before looking at Monday's docket, a Wednesday placement, and finishing up with the NEP court calendar.
Section 1. The Duane Davis trial begins with opening statements in Nevada.
So we're beginning our front-page briefing in Nevada, where a moment nearly 3 decades in the making is finally hitting the courtroom. This Monday, August 17th, at exactly 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time in the 8th Judicial District Court, opening statements get underway. The defendant, Duane Davis, also known as Keffe D, has pleaded not guilty to a murder charge connected to the 1996 killing of Tupac Shakur. Now remember, Davis firmly retains the presumption of innocence, and the prosecution carries the absolute burden of proving their allegations beyond a reasonable doubt.
And that brings us to the core legal strategy we're going to see unfold here. The prosecution is relying heavily on a legal theory known as accomplice liability. Basically, prosecutors allege that Davis helped organize, facilitate, or supply the means for the attack. Under the specific theory, they actually don't have to prove Davis himself fired the shots, but, and this is a big but, they still absolutely carry that strict burden of proof to legally connect him to the crime.
We also need to draw a hard legal boundary right at the start of this trial. Monday's proceeding, it's just opening statements. Opening statements are simply roadmaps. They outline what the prosecution and the defense expect their cases to show. That is literally it. What this isn't is admitted evidence or proof of guilt. Jurors have to decide this case entirely based on actual admitted evidence inside the courtroom, not on the attorney's opening pitches or, decades of public rumor.
Section 2. The Lindsay Clancy trial resumes in Plymouth County Superior Court. For this one, we're heading over to Massachusetts. Clancy has pleaded not guilty to the 2023 killings of her 3 young children. While the trial is scheduled to resume on Monday, August 17th, the exact start time hasn't been publicly verified just yet. Now, this is an incredibly sensitive case, and the defense has centered heavily on Clancy's mental condition at the time of the tragedy.
The absolutely crucial point we need to understand here is the strict separation between a reported medical condition like postpartum psychosis and the state's legal threshold for criminal responsibility. The defense is pursuing a lack of criminal responsibility theory. But we have to be really careful not to generalize or stigmatize here. Experiencing a postpartum illness does not automatically equate to violence. As legal precedent establishes, a medical diagnosis does not automatically establish or defeat criminal responsibility. The court's fact finder has to apply Massachusetts' specific governing legal standard to the admitted evidence. So, evidence of a diagnosis provides really essential context, for sure, but a medical diagnosis alone doesn't dictate the final legal outcome. They are answering 2 completely different questions.
Section 3. Karmelo Anthony post-trial hearings down in Collin County, Texas.
Our third headliner takes us to Texas for a 1-2 punch of significant post-conviction proceedings in the death of Austin Metcalf. Anthony's defense has initiated 2 separate legal challenges following his conviction, and they're going to be heard consecutively. First, on Wednesday, August 19th at 9 a.m. Central, the court holds a judicial recusal proceeding. Then the very next morning, Thursday, August 20th at 9 a.m. Central, there's a totally separate new trial proceeding.
Now, the internet loves to jump to conclusions with this stuff, so let's define these legal boundaries clearly. Holding a hearing to request a judge's recusal or a new trial is absolutely not the same thing as granting that relief. The court is simply examining claimed legal or procedural errors. This doesn't mean a retrial has started, and it certainly doesn't magically erase the conviction. It's just the formal process of hearing the defense's arguments out.
Section 4. Monday's verified court docket, covering proceedings in Florida and California.
With our 3 headliners covered, let's shift to a chronological rundown of the remaining verified docket. We're jumping back to Monday to look at 2 very different legal events on opposite sides of the country. First, Mario Fernandez Saldana in Florida's Duval County Courthouse. At 9 a.m. Eastern, opening statements begin in his criminal trial for the 2022 killing of Jared Bridegan. He's pleaded not guilty. Meanwhile, over in Los Angeles County, California, we have Nick Reiner. The exact time is unverified, but this is a completely different arena. It's a probate trust access hearing,
totally separate from a criminal trial.
Looking specifically at Nick Reiner's request for legal expense funds, we have to keep this probate dispute legally distinct from his unresolved criminal charges. The probate court is strictly dealing with trust administration and whether he can access those assets. It is not deciding anything about the criminal allegations against him. In that case, he's pleaded not guilty, and the presumption of innocence firmly remains.
Section 5. Wednesday's state hospital placement in Yolo County Superior Court. Moving forward to Wednesday, August 19th, we're looking at a post-verdict disposition hearing in California. At a time not yet publicly verified, Carlos Reales Dominguez will be in Yolo County Superior Court. Dominguez was previously found not guilty by reason of insanity in the Davis stabbings case. It's really vital we use precise legal language here. This was a specific insanity finding, not a simple acquittal, and that leads directly to this week's scheduled hearing.
So what happens next? Well, the court is no longer deciding criminal guilt. That whole phase is over. Instead, Wednesday's hearing is all about establishing the legal and clinical framework for his secure treatment and state hospital commitment. The focus shifts entirely from prosecution over to placement and secure psychiatric care.
Section 6. The NEP Court Calendar. Stay verified and avoid speculation.
And that brings us to our final takeaway. Because official court schedules can change rapidly without any notice, trials get delayed and hearings get reassigned all the time, relying on verified data is absolutely essential for truly understanding the justice system. So, I'll leave you with this question. When the headline starts screaming this week, will you follow the verified facts, or will you get lost in the internet speculation? If you want to track these consequential proceedings exactly as they unfold, with zero sensationalism, visit the Neural Edge Publishing Court Calendar at CassianCreed.com/court calendar. They maintain a rolling 30-day window of verified updates. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today, and keep learning.